Hello everyone, welcome back. We are here to continue our discussion of the law of one, and today we're going to talk about the 7 densities or the 7 levels of consciousness that we need to move through in order to know ourselves, apprehend our true nature, and return back to the fullness of the Creator. And if that doesn't make sense now, hopefully it will make a little more sense at least by the end of the video. So the 7 densities are levels of energetic vibration. Okay, these are pre-planned by the universal or galactic beings. So let's say our Milky Way galaxy chose 7 levels of experience that all beings within the galaxy, within our universe, need to move through in order to fully know themselves. So these are not a natural outgrowth of random chaotic energy. This is the blueprint for the different levels of experience that the galactic being wanted itself to experience. And it's important, like, always think of the idea that this is a level of energetic vibration. It's a quality of vibration. Energy is conscious. Consciousness is energetic. Keep that in mind. Energy is conscious. Consciousness is energetic. So as our consciousness expands, we start to vibrate energetically at higher and higher levels, and we start to progress through the densities, the 7 densities. We're in 3rd density now. We're going to go through all of them here. The 7 densities have a relation to the 7 chakras or 7 energy centers, if you're familiar with them. And you'll see as we go through these some certain congruency between the qualities of vibration or energy or consciousness in each of the densities and as they relate to the 7 chakras. We're going to go way further in depth into the chakras in later videos because they really are the key to self-healing, self-balancing, and knowledge of self. Self-knowledge simply cannot occur fully without understanding the chakras. So I'm looking forward to getting into that, but I'm also looking forward to getting into this right now. And so I have written here, the ability to express consciousness grows with each ascending density as the vibratory rate of each density increases. As an entity moves through the densities, it is increasingly able to apprehend and comprehend the true nature of self, refining its self-awareness and knowledge of self. So we'll start getting into the quotes here. So the 7 densities can most easily be understood with the analogy of the Western scale of music, right? We have 7 notes on a musical scale. I'll put a little picture up in the video here right now. And as we go on to the 8th note, it's really just the first density of the next octave, and then it repeats infinitely, right? You have the 7 major notes, and then after 7, it starts over again. You go 7 more, it starts over again. It starts over again. It keeps going. So Ra says here, Don asks, could you define the word density as we have been using it to give us a little greater idea of the concept of this term when used by you? Ra says, I am Ra. The term density is what you would call mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of experience, which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density, there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity, 7 sub-subdensities, and so on infinitely. Now that last part is not critical to understand, and it sort of boggles the mind until you get further into this. But just know for now we have 7 densities of experience. Each one, in order to progress through them, requires higher and higher levels of self-awareness, self-understanding. Okay, quality of being. Okay, so in the last video we had the final quote where Ra was explaining to Don how the manifestation of the physical universe proceeds from larger to smaller. Like, what is the hierarchical order from infinity on down the line? And we'll just reiterate this here because it helps. Ra says the progression of the formation of physical matter is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy to the planetary spiraling energy to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy which begin the first density of awareness or consciousness of planetary entities. Okay, so we have the galactic being, galactic logos. Solar systems are formed from that. Planets are formed around the solar system center, the sun. And then once planets have solidified, then life can begin to exist on the surface of those planets. And here's where we get into the 7 densities themselves. Okay, so what is the first density of experience? First density is the density of simple awareness or beingness. And on planet Earth, that manifests as air, fire, water, and earth. So the 4 elements are the first density on this planet. Okay, it corresponds to the color red and the root chakra. Okay, first chakra. Side note, Ra refers to the chakras as energy centers, which is what they are. Chakras is the Sanskrit word for them in the Hindu spiritual system. I go back and forth between energy centers and chakras, so I might use both here from time to time. But Ra also calls them, when referring to the color, as ray. So we have red ray, orange ray, yellow ray, green ray, etc. So they would call first density red ray. It's a ray of light that displays a particular color, like the 7 colors of the rainbow. Yeah, in addition to the musical scale, you could also look at the rainbow and see in a rainbow the 7 discrete colors. Of course, they're blending a little bit, but there are 7 colors stemming from white light, from pure white light. So that's really another indicator as to the reality of there being 7 densities. It's seen in the prism when light reflects and we get a rainbow, right? Okay, anyway, so first density, color red, red ray relates to red ray, root chakra, first chakra, okay? We'll go more into the chakras later. So Dawn asks, the original first entities on this planet, what was their origin? Ra says, I am Ra. The first entities upon this planet were water, fire, air, and earth. Dawn asks, could you tell me about the first density of planetary entities? Ra says, I am Ra. Each step recapitulates or repeats the process of intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you would call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness, just like infinity became self-aware, just like the co-creators become self-aware, right? Thus, the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life upon the planet, learning from fire and wind the awareness of being. This is the first density. So that's a nice quote, and it really hints at that at every level of experience, it repeats the process that infinity undertook. At some point, things become self-aware. They start to move then within that self-awareness. Like we as humans, like we're not self-aware right away. It takes about usually 12 to 18 months until we start to realize, okay, I'm me. That's mama. That's dada, right? This is brother, sister. We start to perceive ourselves as other than self, and then we develop self-awareness in terms of the personality that starts to grow. Then we start to go out and we start to interact with others. So we have a social aspect to our being. Then we realize that, oh, we need love. And, oh, I want to learn things. I need wisdom, right? So we even recapitulate the process that infinity undertook at the very beginning phases of creation. And so Ra says that first density took about 2 billion years on Earth. Dawn asks, could you give me an idea of the length of the first and second density that occurred on this planet? Ra says, I am Ra. Upon the entry into the constructed space-time, your first density spanned a bridge of space-time and time-space of perhaps 2 billion of your years. So 2 billion years just for first density to occur. Air, fire, water, and earth sort of moving about chaotically until they start to form and coalesce. Rivers start to, oceans and rivers form, land masses form, right? Now, how do you get from first to second density, right? So Ra says here, Don asks, does the first density then progress to greater awareness? Ra says, the spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, remember all things are made of light, the spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, moves in a straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Thus, first-dimensional beingness strives towards the second density lessons of a type of awareness which include growth rather than disillusion or random change, right? So this is interesting because, right, fire, it comes, it dissolves. Water, it's in water form, it's either frozen, it melts, it evaporates. It's just dissolving all the time. It's not necessarily growing. It just is or it is not, right? And so Don asks, could you define what you mean by growth? Ra says, picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings, which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards light and growth. Don asks, by striving towards light, what do you mean? Ra says, a very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light is that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. So when we see flowers opening in the morning, they're blooming. Yeah, they're trying to reach the light. They're opening themselves up to the sun. So this gives us a hint as to the nature of second density, which we will get into now. So second density is the density of movement and growth. It relates to the orange ray, sacral chakra, or second chakra. This includes anything from microbial organisms all the way up to animals. So beings existing on the planetary surface that can move about. So there's awareness of beingness, but there's not total self-awareness yet. Okay, so they have the ability to move, grow, and interact and communicate with the environment somewhat. But they don't have free will quite yet. They're run more on instinct. They run on instinct, animals, right? Minerals, microbial organisms, rocks, plants, trees, animals. This is second density. Okay. Don asks, were there second density entities here prior to approximately 75,000 years ago? What types of entities were these? Ra says, the second density is the density of the higher plant life and animal life which exists without the upward drive towards the infinite. These second density beings are of an octave of consciousness, just as you find various orientations of consciousness among the conscious entities of your vibration. So that's what I was saying earlier. Within each band, discrete band of energy within each density, there's still a quality of beingness that can vary widely, right? So like a microbial organism, Ra saying is second density, but so is a whale, or a dog or a horse, or an elephant, which are very, very intelligent beings. So it's not just because something is in a particular density doesn't mean that they all have the exact same levels of consciousness. Just like if you happen to look around you, you will meet people of varying levels of intelligence, consciousness, and self-awareness, right? So there's a pretty wide range that can occur within the distinct bands of energy which make up the densities. Okay, important to remember. And Ra says that the second density cycle is roughly 4.6 billion years. Ra says second density represents your longest density in terms of the span of space-time. We estimate that time as approximately 4.6 billion years. So this is it's unfathomable. I mean, there's no way we can sit here and read, okay, first density was 2 billion years, second density was 4.6. That's great. We as humans can barely perceive 500 years, let alone 4.6 billion years. So that means the Earth has been here for a long time. And I'm not a big, science person. I don't know what the consensus is in the scientific community about the age of Earth. But if we're going to listen to Ra, then we're talking at least 6.5, pushing 7 billion years, which is again just really unfathomable. Okay, so how do second density entities, beings, become third? How would you graduate to third density from second? And Ra says there are 3 types of second density entities which become, shall we say, inspirited. The first is the animal. This is the most predominant. The second is the vegetable, most especially that which you would call a tree. These entities are capable of giving and receiving enough love to become individualized. The third category is mineral. Occasionally, a certain location, place as you may call it, becomes energized to individuality through the love it receives and gives in relation to a third density entity, which is us humans, which is in relationship to it. This is the least common transition. So animals and trees, right? This is why nature is so healing, because nature is aware of infinity. It's aware on some level of its connection to all that there is. It's not separate. Only once we enter into third density, which we'll learn next, do we go through the process of forgetting and the sense of separation. So this is why it's recommended, and it's being scientifically proven, that if you feel stressed or tired or confused or upset, go for a walk, and hopefully not in a city if you can. Go be in nature, get amongst the trees, go hike up a mountain, go to the beach, be by nature. You can receive love and healing from nature, even though you may not be aware that that's what's happening. So Ra says, yeah, right, these entities are capable of giving and receiving enough love to become individualized. Now, related to animals, these are Ra that are the most likely to be able to progress to third density. And they say that that happens most intensely through humans interacting with animals as pets, which is great. So Ra says, perhaps the most common occurrence of second density graduation into third density is the so-called pet, the animal which is exposed to the individualizing influences of the bond between animal and third density entity, human. This individuation causes a sharp rise in the potential of the second density entity, so that upon the cessation of physical complex, death of the physical body, the mind-body complex does not return unto the undifferentiated consciousness of that species, if you will. So Ra says next, Don asks, when this transition from second to third density takes place, how does the entity, whether it be animal, tree, or mineral, become inspirited? Ra says, entities do not become inspirited. They become aware of the intelligent energy within each portion, cell, or atom, as you may call it, of its beingness. This awareness is that which is awareness of that already given. From the infinite come all densities. The self-awareness comes from within, given the catalyst of certain experiences / understanding, as we may call this particular energy, the upward spiraling of the cell or atom or consciousness. You may then see there's an inevitable pull towards the eventual realization of self. So this is really cool. Like, animals out in the wild, they don't have communication with humans, which are fully autonomous, free will, free thinking, hopefully, beings. And so you have a pet, you name it, you start talking to it, you start communicating with it, you start treating it as if it's an individual that hopefully, if you're a good owner, it deserves love and respect and kindness and to be cared for. And it starts to feel the love that it's given, and it can start to give love back. Like everyone loves their pets. And so I think that's very nice that, if you have a pet and you're loving towards it and you treat it well, that you're actually helping a second density being graduate into third density. That's really a lovely consideration. Okay, so now we're going to talk about third density. We've learned how second density beings graduate into third. So what is third? Well, third is where we're at now, right? Human beings on this planet are third density entities, third density beings. So third density is the density of self-consciousness and self-awareness. It relates to the yellow ray or solar plexus chakra, which is the third chakra. Here we are completely individualized, we're completely self-aware, of course to varying degrees, with total autonomy and free will. And here in third density, there's the introduction to and choice of polarity, positive polarity being service to others, negative polarity being service to self. We're going to discuss this more in a bit, so don't worry if you're going, what is that? Next, the third density operates under the veil of forgetting, which every third density being needs to go through. There's complete forgetting of the connection to universal energies, of all things being interconnected. This is required so that the third density being can make its own free will choices based on its own confusions or choice of what it chooses to focus its attention on. And now this is the shortest of all densities, 75,000 years compared to, what was it, 2 billion for first density, 4.6 billion years for second density, 75,000. It's like the blink of an eye. Very interesting. We're gonna learn why here in a bit. So discussing the length of time here, Don asks, what is the length in years of one of these third density cycles? Ross says, one major cycle is approximately 25,000 of your years. There are 3 cycles of this nature during which those who have progressed enough to go into fourth density may be harvested. At the end of the 3 major cycles, that is approximately 75 to 76,000 of your years, all beings of third density are harvested, regardless of their progress. For during that time, the planet itself has moved through the useful part of that dimension and begins to cease being useful for the lower levels of vibration within that density. So now the timing of the densities is pre-planned as well. It was the choice of the Logos, the galactic being. Third density would be 75,000 years. And the reason for that is that the third density is a choice. As mentioned before, we've got to choose between the 2 polarities. We're going to get more into it in a bit here. Now, Ra says that the third density being just entering third density is not very intelligent, right? So let's go through this here. Ra says the incarnation pattern of the beginning third density mind-body-spirit complex, human, begins in darkness. For you may think or consider of your density as one of what we might say a sleep and a forgetting. This is the only plane of forgetting. Third density is the only density of forgetting. It is necessary for the third density entity to forget so that the mechanisms of confusion or free will may operate upon the newly individuated consciousness complex. What I just said before, with free will and with confusion, we are totally free to make our own decisions, move in whatever direction we want. Thus, the beginning third density entity is one in all innocence oriented towards animalistic behavior, using other selves only as extensions of self for the preservation of the all-self. Sounds a lot like countries fighting in wars endlessly, doesn't it? The entity becomes slowly aware that it has needs, shall we say, that are not animalistic, that is, that are useless for survival. These needs include the need for companionship, the need for laughter, the need for beauty, the need to know the universe about oneself. These are the beginning needs. As the incarnations begin to accumulate, further needs are discovered. The need to trade, the need to love, the need to be loved, the need to elevate animalistic behaviors to a more universal perspective. Okay, now, so yeah, of course, Rob believes in reincarnation. I believe in reincarnation. This whole YOLO concept, you only live once, I mean, doesn't make any sense to me, but and again, I could be completely wrong. Ra could be completely wrong. I don't think they are, which is why I'm making these videos. But yeah, I think many of us have been here before, and if we don't learn the lessons that are required to move from third density into fourth, we're coming back again. Might not be on this planet, but it's just going to be on another third density planet, and we'll talk more about that as we get going. So now we're getting into the purpose of third density. And the purpose of third density is to choose between the 2 polarities that were mentioned earlier. Service to others, the positive path, positive polarity, or service to self, negative path, negative polarity. Now, we'll go on to learn here. Ra says that the third density, in third density, we're here to learn the ways of love. We're here to learn how to love. And we're either going to learn to love others or love the self. Now, that can be a bit confusing because, love of self is an important part of self-healing, but the term, Ra uses it in a way that can easily be misconstrued with the way that we as humans tend to think about love. So the way that I've come to differentiate it is I'm either going to learn to love myself by loving others, or I'm going to learn to love myself by manipulating, controlling, and being sneaky with others to get what I want. That's what they mean when they say love of self, right? I'm going to manipulate and control and use all the people and resources around me so that I can get what I want. Okay, so that's the difference. We're serving others, or we're serving the self through manipulation and control of others. Those are the two paths. Okay, so Don says here in this first quote, which what I commented on earlier, is that we have a third density that is, comparatively speaking, the twinkling of an eye, the snap of a finger in time compared to the others. Why does the third density cycle so extremely rapidly compared to first and second? Ra simply states, the third density is a choice. Don says, this density, then, is nothing but a uniquely short period of what we consider to be time, and is then for the purpose of this choice. This is correct. Is this correct? Ra says this is precisely correct. The prelude to choice must encompass the laying of the foundation, the establishment of the illusion, and the viability of that which can be made spiritually viable. The remainder of the densities is continuous refining of the choice. So the choice is made in third density here. We're either going to learn to love ourselves by loving others, or quote unquote love ourselves by controlling and manipulating others. That will put us on the positive path or the negative path. The fourth, fifth, and sixth, the early sixth density, are a refinement of the choice along the two paths that is made in third density. Okay. So Ra says here, just to reiterate, we'll say it again, the purpose of incarnation in third density is to learn the ways of love. Now, third density catalyst is much more intense than in the other densities, and Ra explains here why that is. Don asks, Don says, there is a what I would call physical catalyst operating at all times upon the entities in third density. Some kind of physical stimulus situation happening with the physical body. I assume this operated approximately the same way in second density. It's a catalyst, a life experience that acts through what we call pain and emotion, is the primary reason for the weakening of the physical body and the elimination of body hair, etc., so that this catalyst would act more strongly upon the mind and therefore create or accelerate the evolutionary process. Ra says, I am Ra. This is not entirely correct, although closely associated with the distortion of our understanding. Consider, if you will, the tree, for instance. It is self-sufficient. Consider, if you will, the third density entity. It is self-sufficient only through difficulty and deprivation. It is difficult to learn alone, for there is a built-in handicap, at once the great virtue and the great handicap of third density. That is the rational/intuitive mind. Thus, the weakening of the physical vehicle, as you call it, was designed to distort entities towards a predisposition to deal with each other. Thus, the lessons which approach a knowing of love can be begun, can start, can begin. Their wording's a little odd at times, but so yeah, the reason that we have such a seemingly weak physical complex is that it was a design by the Logos in hopes that it would force us to interact with each other and force us or accelerate the potential for us to learn the lessons of love. Again, whether that be love of others or love of self through manipulation and control of others. So yeah, so we're going to talk about the two paths and polarity in the next video in much more detail. But for now, just remember that third density is the one that we're in. It's the human form. It involves autonomous self-consciousness, the apparent separation of self and others. And the goal is to learn the ways of love through service to others or service to self. Okay? So these first three densities are pretty easy to comprehend because we can see how they operate in nature. We can see water, air, fire, earth, right? We're standing on the earth. We can see the ocean. We can see fires. We can make fires. And then we can look about ourselves and we can see plants and animals and minerals. And so, okay, that makes sense. First, second density, we can apprehend it, right? With our physical vehicle. Now, what happens after this? What happens when we get into fourth density? This is where it gets more a little esoteric, and it's more difficult to talk about, but we're going to do our best here. So the fourth density is the density of love and understanding. It relates to the green ray or the heart chakra, fourth chakra. Here, individual mind, body, spirit complexes group together to form what are called social memory complexes. Social memory complex is a group of souls who join together in a singular orientation of seeking or service. Here, the split into fourth density positive, service to others, social memory complexes, and fourth density negative, service to self, social memory complexes occurs. There's a split, 40 positive, 40 negative. Refining of the polarity chosen in third density occurs here, and this refinement continues in fifth density and the beginning portions of sixth density. The length of fourth density is approximately 30 million years. So that again throws into stark contrast the 75,000 years we have in third density to make the choice. So our planet is currently transitioning into fourth density, and people who are trying to graduate to fourth density positive are going to be attempting to learn the lessons of universal love, compassion, acceptance, forgiveness, understanding via service to others. Negative beings, people who are attempting to polarize along the negative path, are attempting at every conceivable level of individual and societal interaction to control, manipulate, and enslave humanity in order to enrich and empower themselves. So this is how the two paths are chosen. Now, those who graduate to 4D positive, they need to be utilizing the heart chakra. This is the chakra of understanding, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, universal love. Those who are going to graduate along 4D negative path, they will be able to do so while completely negating fourth ray, green ray. There is no love within these people. However, they're able to still progress towards into the next density, and that can be troubling for some people to accept. And we'll give Ra's explanation or understanding of this in this section. Okay, so Don asks, is it possible for you to give a small description of fourth density? Ra says, I am Ra. We ask you to consider as we speak that there are no words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still until we become without words. That which fourth density is not, it is not of words unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements. It is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. So this is a description of 4D positive. And interesting, one of the things that was most interesting to me in this is that they said it is not of words unless chosen. And I meditated on that, and I thought, it seems to me they're subtly hinting at a lot of the times we talk as humans, but we're not consciously choosing everything that we say. A lot of what we say, if you really talk to people and you pay attention, or if we listen to ourselves speak, a lot of what we say is just subconscious impulse, or it's societal programming, it's training to communicate in a particular way. To when you meet someone, you've got to say this and you've got to say that, when really you might be wanting to ask them something else, right? So here, words are carefully chosen and they're consciously apprehended and chosen. So I thought that was interesting. Now, one of the things that is happening for me all the time, more and more, the planet is already vibrating at a fourth dimensional level, and we'll learn more about that in the next video. We as humans are still stuck completely in 3D because we don't have the awareness, or I would say even the desire for soul evolution to, as a species, move into 4D with the planet. But all the time, especially it happens here at home with my wife and my oldest son. I'll be thinking something, and 5 seconds later, one of them will say it, and the same thing in reverse. So the ability to kind of pick up on other people's thoughts and energies and vibrations is certainly growing on this planet. And if you start to really go through the self-healing and balancing process, and if you're already a sensitive person energetically, could be because you've come to visit Earth from somewhere else, then yeah, you'll be sensing that and picking that up more and more. And so, describing the term mentioned earlier, social memory complex, Ross says this: a mind-body-spirit social complex, which would be us currently as humanity, becomes a social memory complex when its entire group of entities are of one orientation or seeking. The group memory lost to the individuals in the roots of the tree of mind then become known to the entire social complex, thus creating a social memory complex. The advantages of this complex are the relative lack of distortion in understanding the social beingness, and the relative lack of distortion in pursuing the direction of seeking, for all understanding/distortions are available to the entities of the society. So in 4D, you're completely aware of other selves. You're completely aware of their strengths, their weaknesses, their blockages. There's no attempt to hide the self. There's no need to hide the self. And as everything is honestly seen and assessed, you can say, okay, well, this is where we're at, and how do we work together among this, among our various distortions, strengths, weaknesses? How can we come together in full transparency to seek in the direction that we've chosen to seek in? And that's what humanity's missing. And I think humanity's mainly missing that because we're not fans of honesty. We really don't like being honest with ourselves, first of all. And so it's impossible to be honest with others if we can't be honest with ourselves. We're all hiding something, right? So in 4D, there is no hiding. And Jesus said, if you read some of Jesus's quotes, there's so much congruency with the qualities of some of the things said in the raw material. I believe Jesus said something like, nothing shall remain hidden. Everything shall come to the light. Everything shall come up to the surface and be seen clearly. And I think this is what he's talking about in 4D. There is no hiding. There's no need to hide. There's no desire to hide. Nothing can remain hidden if you want to progress into the fourth density. Okay. Let's see. So fourth density cycle lasts 30 million years, but it's a little different than third density. So graduation from 4D into 5D is completely dependent upon the readiness of the social memory complex in 4D. If they're ready at any point within that 30 million years, then they get to go on. So Ross says, how long is the cycle of experience in fourth density in our years? The cycle of experience is approximately 30 million of your years if the entities are not capable of being harvested sooner. There is in this density a harvest which is completely the function of the readiness of the social memory complex. It is not structured as is your own, for it deals with the more transparent understanding of the one infinite creator. Again, third density is the only density of forgetting. In fourth density, there is complete remembrance, awareness, and knowledge of the one infinite creator, the evolutionary process, what beings in 4D are meant to be doing, and if they get ready and they're done with their homework before 30 million, then they go to 5. Okay. Now, regarding the fourth density negative path, Ra says, can you give me a condition? Don asks, could you give me some idea of what conditions are like on a fourth density negative or self-service planet? Ra says, the graduation into fourth density negative is achieved by those beings who have consciously contacted intelligent infinity through the use of red, orange, and yellow rays of energy. Those would be the first three chakras, again, completely negating the fourth. Therefore, the planetary conditions of fourth density negative include the constant alignment and realignment of entities in effort to form the dominant patterns of combined energy. The early fourth density negative is one of the most intensive struggle. When the order of authority has been established and all have fought until convinced that each is in the proper placement for power structure, the social memory complex begins. Always the fourth density effects of telepathy and the transparency of thought are attempted to be used for the sake of those at the apex of the power structure. This, as you may see, is often quite damaging to the further polarization of fourth density negative entities, for the further negative polarization can only come about through group effort. I mean, 4D negative sounds just completely awful. I can't even imagine how long it must take 4D negative to attempt to work together to the degree that they can progress to 5D. It sounds truly awful, and I have no intention of going there. Now, as a side note, Ross says that planet Earth will be a fourth density positive planet, and that the potential, the number of people who have the potential to graduate 4D positive far outweigh the number of people who have the potential to graduate 4D negative. So Don asks, can you tell me why the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems that there is a greater negative population? Ra says, I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. This is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion or understanding, perception, which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences, which are of your space-time present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality. Okay, so it's true. There's way more of us than there are of them. And we're certainly reaching a critical point on Earth where there's only a handful, I believe, of human beings who are consciously aware of the polarization process and who are consciously attempting to graduate along the 4D negative path. There's lots of selfish people out there, but they're not conscious really of what they're doing. I would include the WEF and, what we would call the Illuminati or the NWO, New World Order, these beings who are trying to enslave people. These are the elites, and these ones are the ones who will have the potential to graduate 4D. But I think most people are at heart good people, and they want peace, and they want just a loving, peaceful life. And so hopefully people can wake up a bit, and the positive people can win the day. Okay, moving on to fifth density. Fifth density is the density of wisdom or light. It relates to the blue ray or throat chakra, which is the fifth chakra. And the fifth density balances the intensity of expression of love practiced and learned in fourth density with wisdom. Here we're still refining the chosen polarity, and the split between polarities is still there, fifth density positive or fifth density negative. One of the differences here between fourth and fifth is that a soul may choose to learn as an individual mind-body-spirit complex or as part of a social memory complex. Fifth density graduation is achieved through conscious understanding and acceptance of the law of one, which simply states all is one. So here, souls are attempting to balance the love that they learned and expressed in fourth density with wisdom. And Ra says at one point that love and wisdom are faces of the same coin. They're different aspects of the same thing. So in fifth density, you're trying to learn more wise ways in which you can display and express compassion. Ra would call this compassionate wisdom. Okay, so just a few quotes about the quality of fifth density that aren't going to make much sense because we can't really understand it fully. Ra says, the fifth density is the density of light or wisdom. Fifth density is perhaps best described as extremely white in vibration. Now, this is a great quote here because it speaks to the process of balancing love and wisdom. So Don says, in the last session, you made the statement that we, that is Ra, spent much time space in the fifth density balancing the intense compassion gained in fourth density. Could you expand on this concept? Ra says, I am Ra. The fourth density, as we have said, abounds in compassion. This compassion is folly when seen through the eyes of wisdom. It is a salvation of third density, but creates a mismatch in the ultimate balance of the entity. Thus we, as a social memory complex of fourth density, had the tendency towards compassion even to martyrdom in aid of other selves, martyrdom being sacrificing their own lives in aid of other selves. When the fifth density harvest was achieved, we found that in this vibratory level, flaws could be seen in the efficacy of such unrelieved compassion. We spent much time space in contemplation of those ways of the Creator which imbue love with wisdom. A follow-up quote says, the green ray response, the heart chakra, fourth density response to the suffering of others is not as refined as that which is imbued with wisdom. This wisdom enables the entity to appreciate its contribution to the planetary consciousness by the quality of its being without regard to activity or behavior, which expects results upon visible planes. And even though this is a fifth density understanding, this kind of understanding can be applied to us here in third density. I've learned to, I've undertaken the process of balancing action with being. And I think once a person starts to accept that the quality of their beingness, what's inside, the quality of their intentions, their thoughts, their emotions, their overall the overall expansiveness of their perception of themselves, oneness with all, the Creator experiences itself through me. When I hold my children, I'm holding the Creator. It's the Creator holding the Creator. I can look into my children's eyes and I know that the Creator is experiencing itself through them in a completely unique way. And I'm aware that the Creator is experiencing itself through me in that same thing. So that is being. That's not doing anything. I'm just sitting, and it's the quality of perception. And so I've learned that is just as important as anything that we can do physically here in the visible 3D plane. So I've really attempted to utilize this quote quite a bit, and it's become increasingly sort of possible for me and important. So, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Ra says that here in fifth density, entities may choose to learn as a social memory complex or as a mind-body-spirit complex, and may graduate to sixth density under these conditions. For the wisdom density is an extremely free density, whereas the lessons of compassion leading to wisdom necessarily have to do with other selves. Now, graduation for fifth density requires an entity to consciously understand and accept the law of one. Don asks, at what point in densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to progress? The fifth density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor duty of the law of one. This responsibility honor is the foundation of this vibration. Good? So that is fifth density. Again, it grows, our ability to comprehend grows more and more limited. So fourth, fifth, and sixth are much shorter than third. So sixth density is the density of unity or balanced love and wisdom. It relates to the indigo ray, the ajna or third eye chakra, which is the sixth chakra. Perfect balance between love and wisdom is sought in sixth density. Here, the positive and negative paths merge. The negative polarity is abandoned, as here in sixth density, all must be consciously accepted and loved as one and equal. All other selves must be perceived as equal to the self. This is where the higher self resides and where Ra currently resides. And sixth density seeks the gateway density, the seventh density, where one merges completely once more with the Creator. So Ra says here, in sixth density, the density of unity, The positive and negative paths must needs take in each other, for all now must be seen as love, light, and light, love. This is not difficult for the positive polarity, which sends love and light to all other selves. It is difficult enough for service to self-polarized entities that at some point in the negative polarity is abandoned in early sixth density. Don asks, what would the quality of light of sixth density look like? Ra says, we may speak only approximately. The sixth density is of a whiteness which contains a golden hue as you would perceive it. These colors having to do with the blending into wisdom of the compassion learned in fourth density. Then in sixth, the blending of wisdom back into a unified understanding of compassion viewed with wisdom. This golden color is not of your spectrum, but is what you would call alive. No idea what that means, but there you have it. Now, this next quote is really great, and I'm glad Don asks this because it gives us a kind of glimpse into what Ra is doing up there or over there in sixth density. So Don asks, could you describe or tell me the rituals or technique used by Ra in seeking in the direction of service? Ra says, I am Ra. To speak of that which sixth density social memory complexes labor within in order to advance is at best misprision of plain communication, for much is lost in translation of concept from density to density, and the discussion of sixth density is inevitably distorted greatly. However, we shall attempt to speak to your query, for it is an helpful one, in that it allows us to express once again the total unity of creation. We seek the Creator upon a level of shared experience to which you are not privy, and rather than surrounding ourselves in light, we have become light. Our understanding is that there is no other material except light. Our rituals, as you would call them, are an infinitely subtle continuation of the balancing process which you are now beginning to experience. We seek now without polarity. Thus we do not invoke any power from without, for our search has become internalized as we become light, love, and love, light. These are the balances we seek, the balances between compassion and wisdom which more and more allow our understanding of experience to be informed, that we may come closer to the unity with the one Creator which we so joyfully seek. That is really lovely to me. Now, we'll move on to seventh density, which Ra calls the gateway density. So seventh density is the density of the gateway or completion. It relates to violet ray, crown chakra. This is the seventh chakra, the last of the seven energy centers. Here, personal identity dissolves completely and reunion with the one Creator is achieved. The seventh density is a guide or resource for the higher self. We have a higher self in sixth density, which we mentioned before. We can use the higher self as a guide, as a resource for our learning here in third. The higher self uses for its guide what Ra calls the mind-body-spirit complex totality, which exists in the seventh density. Now, completion of the seventh density leads to entry into the octave density, which, as we noted on the musical scale earlier, really is just the first density of the new octave / universe / logos, which incorporates all knowledge the Creator has learned of itself from this octave of experience. So the eighth density is the first density of the next octave, and then you progress through those seven, and then the first density of the eighth density after the next octave is really just the first density of the next one. So as far as we know, and Ra says even at some point, we consider the steps to be infinite. As far as we know, there's no ending to it. So just relax, because I think we're going to be here for a little while. Yeah. Okay, so there's some nice quotes here about seventh density. And since Ra is not even at the level of seventh density, their ability to speak on it is even more limited than the others. At least through 4, 5, and 6, which is where they're at now, they can speak pretty clearly about it because they've been there. So Ra says, I am Ra. It may be seen that in the cycle of completion there exists only the present. We ourselves seek to learn this understanding. At the seventh level of dimension, we shall, if our humble efforts are sufficient, become one with all, thus having no memory, no identity, no past or future, but existing in the all. The seventh density is a density of completion and the turning towards timelessness or foreverness. The seventh density being, the completed being, the creator who knows itself, accumulates spiritual mass and compacts into the one creator once again. Don says here, Ra states that it has knowledge of only this octave, but it seems that Ra has complete knowledge of this octave. Can you tell me why this is? Ra says, I am Ra. Firstly, we do not have complete knowledge of this octave. There are portions of the seventh density which, although described to us by our teachers, remain mysterious. Secondly, we have experienced a great deal of the available refining catalyst of this octave, and our teachers have worked with us most carefully that we may be one with all, that in turn our eventual returning to the great allness of creation shall be complete. Okay, so Ra then says, after the seventh density has been well entered, the mind-body-spirit complex becomes so totally a mind-body-spirit complex totality that it begins to gather spiritual mass and approach the octave density. Thus, the looking backwards is finished at this point. So yeah, as Ra is our teacher, my teacher, they've described to us the qualities of fourth, fifth, and sixth density, but it's still really mysterious to us. As Ra said, there's so much misunderstanding in the ability to describe from dimension to dimension that even they don't really know what the seventh density is fully like. And so we just need to know that the seventh density is the final one within this octave of creation. Graduation from the seventh density grants access to what is called the octave density, or the eighth density, which is once again just the first density of the next octave of experience. So I've got this here. Do we have an 8? No, we don't. There's only one quote here for what Ra called the octave density. Ra says, this octave density of which we have spoken is both omega and alpha, which is beginning and end. The spiritual mass of the infinite universe is becoming one central sun or creator once again. Then is born a new universe, a new infinity, a new logos, which incorporates all that the creator has experienced of itself. In this new octave, there are also those who wander. We know very little across the boundary of octave, except that these beings come to aid our octave in its logos completion. So the seventh density receives guidance and support from the eighth. And that's just how it works. There's a hierarchy of teachers that teach the levels below them, guide the levels of experience below them. Okay, so that concludes our talk on the 7 densities. We can briefly review. The first density is the density of pure being or awareness. On this planet, that's air, fire, water, and earth. The second density is the density of movement and growth. This is from little tiny microbial organisms that exist on the surface of water, all the way up to minerals, plants, and animals. From there, we go to third density, which is the density of self-awareness. This is us right now in human form, full self-awareness, complete autonomous free will, here to choose between the 2 paths of polarity, service to others or service to self, which we're going to get into in full detail next video. And here in third density, it's the density of forgetting. We're born into the physical body and we forget everything. We forget our connection to the infinite. We forget our connection to all beings, the reality that all is one, and we're forced into this in order that we can use our confusion or free will to explore life as freely as possible in complete ignorance, and hopefully we'll learn something while we're here. Fourth density is the density of love or understanding. There's the split between 4D positive and 4D negative. 4D positive is the service to others path, where we're utilizing mainly the heart chakra, which again is universal love, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, understanding, in order to grow along the positive path. 4D negative is using the first 3 chakras with complete negation of love. There is no love or compassion along the 4D negative path. However, they still get to progress into 4D, and we're going to get into that in the next video as well. Fifth density is the density of light or wisdom, where you start to balance the love that was gained and expressed in fourth density with wisdom. And wisdom imbued with compassion allows for more intelligent choices, more intelligent, I would say, energy expenditure or energy usage. And remember, Ra said that love and wisdom are two sides of the same coin, different aspects of the same thing. They're not two separate things. And I think in order to fully love, you need wisdom. And in order to be fully wise, you need love. They cannot exist separately from each other. Then you go into sixth density, which is the density of balance, and the balance between love and wisdom, and the density of unity. And there is where higher self resides. This is where Ra is. We have a very, I'm taking Ra as my teacher, so this is higher self teaching. These are master teachers teaching master level metaphysics and understanding of spiritual principles that are in operation right now for us in 3D. And from there, you move on to the seventh density, which is the density of completion. You start to journey back into the allness of the creator. You move then into the octave density, the eighth density. You've completely merged once again with the creator. And I'm assuming sort of like you go into a black hole and you shoot out the other side. And now you're in the first density of the next octave of experience. So yes, in the next video, we are going to get into in depth into the third density where we're at now and the choice to be made here. And I think it's probably going to be the most critical video that I make regarding the law of one outside of the self-healing process. Implicit in the concept of the choice is self-healing, and implicit in the process of self-healing is the choice. So they really go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about third density and then the choice, and then we're going to start to get into the energy centers, the chakras, and how to balance them, self-healing techniques, teachings given by Ra. And at some point, I'm going to have to do a video on who is Ra, but this kind of stuff I feel is just more important. So all I can do is present the material in the way that makes the most sense to me. And I've been doing it chronologically up to this point. From the beginning of infinity, the process by which galaxies, universes, densities, galaxies, solar system, planet, space, time, and then awareness upon the surface of planets. I think it's important to know that chronologically. And then there's a little more freedom to explore the different aspects or categories that are taught in the law of one. Okay, thank you for being here. Hope to see you next time.